I'll hand it over to Lee, and it's all yours.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tracy. Good morning to everybody. Good afternoon. And good evening to some of our friends who are joining us from Europe this evening. Thanks for joining us in our second of the series of our webinars. Today's one is actually slightly different than what you would class as most webinars. We're looking at balancing your work life with also mindfulness of having a separate life away from work. And it's quite important at the moment because we see it, coming to the top of people's thought processes because of the whole COVID-19 thing happening. A lot of people are having to pivot their business to work from home. And I guess with that, as Tracy mentioned here, our main guest today is Zeb Chadfield. And the conversation today will be about how we can pivot our productions to work from home, with tips from Zeb, who's the founder of the highly successful post facility called The Finish Line. When we get into Zeb's story later on, it will all become apparent, but Zeb is a real advocate of well-being and an expert as well on remote productions. So Zeb will share his philosophies and also remote production setups and best practices. You also talk about working beyond COVID-19 and how we can improve our business efficiency, but not only our business efficiency, also how we can most importantly improve our well-being of our staff and ourselves. So I'd like to welcome Zeb and say hello. Hi, Zeb.
Hi, Lee. Hi, thank you for having me.
We've met before.
Yes.
I guess, starting at the beginning, Zeb, you've created a very successful company in the UK. But can you kind of start us where you started, and how did you get into the business, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, I'm from New Zealand and son of a fisherman, and grew up in a very different world from the world that I found myself working in now. But yeah, no, I sort of sometimes sort of say I ran away and joined the circus, but I left home and school and that sort of stuff at 15, and sort of cracked on with life in the world, and I always had a passion for post-production, and then started out doing linear editing, doing tape to tape, all of these sorts of things, and happened to be lucky enough to have The Last Samurai filmed in my hometown. So the benefit of that was that people knew that I was into editing, and the stunt coordinator for the film wanted someone to help him to cut together choreography to show the director, and got me involved, and that gave me a bit of motivation to actually think I could probably make this as a career rather than sticking around home and cutting wedding videos and things like that. So yeah, so I moved to Australia, where I managed to get into a post-production facility within a production company there, and I was working on all the big reality shows there. So MasterChef and Australia's Got Talent and Idol and Biggest Loser, and yeah, you name it. I was probably involved in one way or another, and but I'd grown up on British TV and always had a passion for British documentaries and comedy, and so ultimately made my way to the UK, and arrived here in 2009, which was a recession and not the best time to be starting in a new place. But I did manage to get a job and get into one of the big post houses here, and ended up being the head of their finishing department. So it worked out all right in the end.
Yeah, and I guess you set up The Finish Line in 2011. That was the year, right?
Yeah.
How did that really come about? Where how did you decide? You want to go out on your own. You want to set up your own facility. What was the background behind that?
Yeah, so I actually, the big thing there was I mean, the industry in general is pretty famous for being quite a tough business. Lots of long hours, and lots of passionate people tend to work themselves to the bone. So yeah, we can definitely be our own worst enemies. But also at that time during the recession, it was very difficult. The production budgets had shrunk. The overheads of these facilities was still the same. And so we were kind of, working on a lot of equipment that needed updating, but there was kind of no money for that. We were doing jobs in half a day that should have been probably 2 or 3 or more. And so ultimately I just kind of ran myself into the ground, and ended up having a very terrible nervous breakdown at that point. So in 2011, that happened, and I basically, to the point where I couldn't understand the keys on the keyboard, and this is the kind of work that I've done my whole life at that point. So yeah, it was quite a tough time, and I got signed off work and ultimately decided to hand in my notice. But my sort of passion for the job didn't change. I was kind of remember sitting there and just being like, but I still love the work. I love the creative and technical, the merging of those two sort of arts, and I definitely knew that that's what I wanted to keep doing, but I felt that I had to kind of change the approach and change the way that I did it. Just at least for me, but if I was lucky enough, maybe it would turn into something where I could bring other people in like me to work together.
Yeah, so I guess that's on to our next point, that you decided to do things differently. You set up the finish line, and there's a lot of unique capabilities that you did in the finish line. You wanted to do things different with well-being at the heart of it, mindfulness at the heart, but also the creativity. And I guess you started the business at a time when there was a lot of uncertainty in the post and in facilities. Can you share just with the people on the call here, what was your approach, of remote productions and your work-life balance?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had the good fortune of not having anything to worry about. So, at the time, I was struggling with my own sort of challenges, but I still sort of knew I loved the job, as I mentioned, but also I knew I wanted to eventually have a family, and I really felt the way that the business worked and the way that the industry worked at the time wasn't really going to provide me with the family life that I sort of wanted to have long term. So when I started sort of breaking down the company and sort of thinking about what's important here, it's obviously it's talent and equipment, and so I wanted to kind of start the business with this sort of idea at the forefront, and ultimately I sort of ran into challenges in that, because obviously people don't like to change everything all at once. So the company, our sort of way that we are structured now, where we sort of set up finishing systems inside production offices, and we provide the talent and all the sort of the high-end sort of infrastructure to allow production companies to sort of scale and contract as needed. That was all kind of it there originally. It was in the original sort of plan and my approach, but I wasn't really getting much traction, because I think ultimately it was too much change too quickly. So I had to then go about trying to replicate everything that a client would experience in a normal facility where possible, and then sort of slowly help clients to kind of move over to a more remote process, and sort of help them to sort of see the strengths that it gives, not only for us as sort of creative talent, but for them as well, to be able to actually finish at better times and potentially sort of sign off remotely, so they can go and be part of bedtime for their kids, or go to the theatre or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So you've obviously embraced remote production quite well. You've been doing it for a long time. What type of client work are you doing? What is your typical client that you're working with?
So the main work that we do is long form factual or documentary films and TV shows, mostly for all of the UK broadcasters, but also for the US broadcasters as well, and all the OTT and SVOD services. Even everything from basic, daily programs on UK TV to big sort of 8K productions for NHK in Japan and HD and Dolby HDR and Dolby Vision and these sorts of things as well. So yeah, so it's a very wide scale, but mostly in the factual world.
I guess, so you've been embracing remote production for quite a long time. What was it like for clients and facilities that you were working with? What has it been like for them to embrace remote production? I guess remote production is a big topic on everybody's mind now. You've been embracing it for quite a while. So, what was their initial first thought when you arrived in saying, I'm using the cloud?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just always kind of been a part of the way we did things. So anything we could migrate to virtual systems or to cloud-based systems, we did. And early on, we started using Glacier storage for archiving and things like that on AWS. So we've internally been doing a lot of this stuff for a long time. With clients, like I said, it's kind of about, we don't even really talk about where the servers are running or how the infrastructure runs, really. I think for most people, they just want to know, oh, do I have a portal where I can log in and view my rushes, or can I start to do sync pulls, or can I, they want to do the practical thing. And so the services that we've kind of designed and built and sort of implemented have really been based on client demand. In terms of our sort of processes, we kind of, like I said, trying to transition people, we've always had our sort of delivery process as a remote sign off. So someone would essentially, as a final, thumbs up, yes, you can deliver that program to broadcast. They would receive a secure play link, which is watermarked and all the rest of it, and they would watch that and then they would sign off. So with the sudden change to everything being remote, when suddenly they couldn't sit in the grade suite and online and the dub and things like that they would usually do, even still, they were used to reviewing these play links for delivery anyway. So we could easily, with the majority of our clients, we could just say, look, we send you those normally. You're going to get those a couple more times throughout the process, and but we can kind of just keep running business as usual. And for the most part, that's been easy. And so we also help them out with all of the sort of workflow guides, and you're sending us this from this NLE, send it to us in this way, and all of these sorts of things. But then we could also deploy systems to help them to upload rushes remotely. Get them to us, automate the ingest process, and yeah. So we kind of there's not really any part of the project or process that we can't do. Obviously, we can't create a situation where they can film remotely, but even those conversations were involved with testing equipment and files for them as well.
So I guess technology is obviously facilitating this distributed workflow and distributed workforce that you have at the finish line. And the industry is really demanding. We all know, everybody on this call knows that, working in the TV sector is extremely demanding. What are you doing, in terms of, how do you take care of your team? What are you doing to foster collaboration from a remote team and I guess to harness that collaboration and essentially deliver better looking programs, right?
Yeah. I mean, everything at the end of the day, I guess we break it down, to that simple sort of question, is that kind of, if you can have that governing principle, what are you doing? And what we're doing is trying to deliver great looking programs. So you kind of want to empower your team with something like that, where they can kind of make their own decisions about what they're going to do and how they're going to approach things. But also, as a brand and as a company, you still need to have your guidelines in place so that people aren't kind of going completely rogue. But yeah, in terms of that, I mean, there's lots of growing pains with any business. And so, at the start, I sort of would always try and think, if I was putting this system in place, this works for me or works with 5 people or 10 people or 20 people, will it work for 1,000 people? It was kind of to think about things in that way. And even, doing it that way, there would still be situations where suddenly something wasn't working, or we were having these sort of growing pains. But the communication part was always the big thing. So early on, even with the first sort of few people working for us, when you would I would be getting messages from everywhere. So I would have text messages coming in, and Facebook messages coming in, and Viber messages and WhatsApp, and it would just be coming at me or us from everywhere. And so then we implemented Slack at that stage to kind of just say, look, no, all internal communication has to be on Slack. Obviously, we can't control how clients communicate, and the traditional email is fine, and we don't need to force too much change on the client. But internal communication all has to be in this one place, and that's from a security standpoint, as well as just keeping things simple. So we could then bring in channels for every different project, and channels about different software. So the conversation can always be going within the team, so people can be talking and sharing ideas and getting better together.
I guess, as we talk about, you've been working on remote productions for a number of years. You've been talking about wellness and the care of your staff as they I guess, juggle work-life balance. But I guess, we're navigating this change, and, there's a lot of people on this call, whether they're broadcasters, education, corporate, sports, everybody needs to pivot at the current moment in time, where they may have been happy to go along with the status quo. However, with the current COVID-19 crisis, we've got to change how we do business. What can you share in terms of that? How they can almost move to a cloud environment or remote environment and use this technology.
Yeah, I mean, so I've just always been an advocate for change. I always had this this thing ringing in my head, and I don't know where I picked it up. But I'm sure someone told me along the way. But they would sort of say you have to kind of, we're in a technology-driven industry, right? So we really do need to be jumping from tool to tool and learning what's out there and seeing where we're going to get enhancements to how efficient we can operate as a company. And ultimately, for me, again, it goes back to that thing. We're always trying to deliver better looking pictures. So if this is the best grading tool right now, that's what I'm going to use. If this is the best online tool or text tool or VFX tool, whatever it is, or even encoding, making sure that the quality of my encoding is the best it can be, that's what I'm always going to be sort of obsessively sort of chasing. This is the best plugins package, whatever it is. So there's this kind of idea that where did the film editors go that didn't transition into digital editing, and I always kind of think about that and use it as a bit of a fuel to kind of make sure that I'm always sort of being trying to be one step ahead and pick up any new bit of software that comes along. Obviously that's a way of existing for me. That's just kind of normal life. So it's quite I don't know how to sort of teach it, but I think that the main thing is to really look at throwing out all of the things that you think are best practices. Just because something worked in a facility, now you're working remotely, those same rules don't necessarily apply. And a good example of that is the viewing files for play links and things like that. I was obsessed with streaming live reviews early on, and we built a whole system built around it, and it was really, really good, and I was very, very proud of it. And we could never really get much traction with it, because actually watching something live in a suite with your producer and your creative, however it's working, works really well. But once you suddenly move people into different locations, the streaming process there's so many variables in that, that to do it really well is more complex. And so that's not to say it shouldn't be done, but actually when you remove that part of it and kind of go, actually, do we need to do this? And start thinking about it and breaking it down, you go, actually, well, if I make a play link, I can make sure it's good quality. I can make sure it's provided to the client in a good quality way, and I can make sure that they have a good viewing experience. But also, the client then isn't paying for me by the hour or the suite or anything else. So they can actually sit there and watch that file as many times as they like and go back and look at things and really make sure that they're happy with it and checking off all of their legal compliance notes, whatever it might be. They don't have to feel rushed, but they can also fit it into their life too, so they can have dinner with the family and then pop off into the other room and watch that file at their own leisure. You know, so all of these things, once you kind of take a step back and say, you know, we've always done this, do we need to keep doing this, you know, and then you can start breaking things down and throwing out old tools and processes.
Yeah, so I guess you're constantly evaluating your workflow, you're constantly evaluating your tools, and I guess you're going to show us that today. You're going to give us a demonstration of a workflow in a cloud environment. I guess I'll just set it up for you, Zeb, in terms of what Zeb is actually going to show everybody here. Zeb is going to show EditShare's flow running in AWS environment. He's going to use his file transferring protocol system to upload files into AWS. He's going to review and approve them using Airflow. He's going to do a simple edit with proxy content using Flow Story, which is our lightweight editor that's built into Flow. And finally, he's going to conform that using DaVinci's Resolve for his editing and finishing. So Zeb, I'll let you grab the screen there and you can give us a good demonstration.
All right, cool. Okay, so, I've realized that I've got one piece missing, but that's all right. So let me just kick this off. And so what I have here is I've got everything here actually is all built into an AWS virtual private cloud. So the way we typically do this is to set up a complete private environment for all of our clients' systems to be run within. And so that means that there's no shared servers, no shared anything within the system. And it's completely locked down in whatever way we need to for the specific job. So with EditShare, obviously the beauty of this is that they've made it so that we can deploy the Flow server software onto any hardware or you know, virtual environments, as the case may be. And so we've run a virtual instance here with Flow deployed, and within that, it's running all of the sort of machinery, and so all the control, everything like that is kind of all happening in a completely virtual system. So I'll just show you a little bit of Flow control just to sort of point out there's settings there for proxy settings, and we've got it set up to automatically scan these drives. This is obviously all just a demo system, but within the storage as well, you know, you can see that this is actually just using S3 storage. And there we go, there's my virtual system. I also wanted to show really quickly using Flow Automation. So Flow Automation is a part of this as well. This is running on a virtual workstation, which obviously we could be running any editing software as well. Within the way that Flow Automation works, you can just kind of build out your templates, set up watch folders and triggers, and you know, just to show you sort of the standard type of thing that a normal post-house or post-production facility might be doing all the time. This is just set up a watch folder, which is just looking at one of our media drives, and then you know, we might go in here and set this to transcode and send it to this other media drive. And the formats and everything you can do are all your standard, so it doesn't really matter which NLE you're working in. We could do OP, Atom, Media for Media Composer, QuickTime, you know, for Premiere or Resolve or Final Cut 10 or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I think you told me earlier that there's over 500 different codecs within Flow, so that's pretty incredible.
So I've been told by the product management team.
Well, very
550 something.
Yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, I mean, I'm yet to sort of find something that I need that I don't have. So I'm sure they're probably right. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to sort of quickly point out the way that works. I mean, it's pretty simple stuff. But within that, you can set up all your automated tasks so that watch folders can pick up whatever, make whatever you want, and send it wherever you want. So it can also kind of obviously send that back to S3 storage, or you know, a Sphere transfer to somewhere if you had people working remotely. Whatever it was you needed to do can all be done within that system. And so to go back to the web, so that's flow control. Then Airflow is a viewing platform. So I've got my wedding footage here because I know I can use it without having to worry about any usage rights. And my wife has been hassling me to cut this wedding video for a very long time. So I thought I'd use some of this content. But anyway, you can see there. I mean, this is all the proxy media. So basically, what we've done with this is we've uploaded all the rushes via this portal that was set up in Massive. That's then turned up on an S3 storage because that's.
And that's just a UDP upload, Zeb, is it? That
Yeah. And so that then just uploads it straight into an S3 bucket that we've set up with all the appropriate security settings, and then Flow's picked that up, automatically created proxies for all of the original media files, and made them available for me to view and start. You know, I could add metadata, I could set in and out points, I can start sub-clipping things, and even start to build a basic assembly of a timeline at this point. So, you know, even just that alone, like I said before, trying to make sure you don't sort of overcomplicate things for clients has become a sort of big part of the way that we operate. And so we'll typically introduce a new client to just this part of the interface to start with. And then they'll eventually start asking for more. Can I do a sync pull? Can I you know, send anything to the edit, or can I whatever? And then we can start to go, yes, you can. You know, here's how you do these things. And so once you go sort of beyond this point, obviously this is all playing back, and I'm just on Wi-Fi as well, just to sort of point that out. And I could just be sitting here, you know, prepping timelines, adding markers, and all of those things are interchangeable between your editing software as well. So once we get to the point where I'm ready to move on from here, and I could have an editor, or I could be working within Flow Story. And Flow Story is a desktop app. So this is actually running on my computer, but it's still accessing those same proxy files from the from that server that's running in AWS. Cool. I'm not losing anyone here.
No, you're good.
Cool. So this is, you know, obviously that browse environment is very similar to what you saw before. If I flip back to Airflow, so the actual process of moving from one part of Flow into another part is actually quite an easy transition. And then you can sort of move between edit, VFX, and audio, and do all of these sorts of elements of the job, as well as you're refining your cut. But it is a completely fully fledged editor, which I think a lot of people don't know. That you know, you guys also own Lightworks, which is a you know, very good and established editing system on its own merits. And a lot of the sort of hardware, and well, I guess a lot of the code that's gone into that is being sort of brought into Flow Story. And so it's a really lean little app that runs really well. And you can do everything, all of your audio, you know, mixing. You can do voiceover recording and then check those back into Flow. You can do basic grades and all of these things. But obviously for us, we do all of our finishing and final sort of QC and mastering processes through DaVinci Resolve. And then we also use QScan for automated QC. But I will just show you very quickly how easy. So once someone's actually cut something together, I've got Resolve open here. And again, this is open on my desktop, but this could be on a Amazon workspace or something similar as well. But yeah, I can jump into Flow. I'm actually going to pull this into a window. So if I pull that sequence out into here, actually I should point this out as well because it's really cool. The interchange options are all here. So actually from whatever I'm cutting in, I can actually be sending this back to any other editing tool. So whether it's FCPX XML or FCP7 XML, which goes into Premiere or AAF, it doesn't really matter. In this case, I'm bringing it in as the FCP7 XML just because it works well with what I'm doing. Yeah, and if I go in here, import that XML, and just say don't.
So I guess what you're saying there is that although you're editing Flow Story, that you can pull that EDL list into other creative platforms.
Yeah,
your choice here is Resolve, and you have standardized on Resolve recently, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, last year we decided to move away from all the other tools. Obviously, we still accept projects from everything else, but we've sort of decided, you know, like I said before, we'll always use whatever the best tool for the job is at the time, and currently that's Resolve. So you know, it's just a very, very powerful application, and for us in the finishing world, it's really got all the things that we need and love, and you know, also they're another company that sending requests through to, that they will take them on board, and often a lot of the things that we ask for end up in the software, which is also something I found with EditShare as well. But yeah, just to point out that, I mean, that whole thing conformed back to the original media, and at that point I could you know, jump on and color and crack on with the rest of whatever it is that I'm doing here. So that's it, really.
Brilliant. Nice, quick and easy demo, Zeb. But I guess the whole thing there is we were talking about, you know, a cloud environment. You're sitting on your laptop, you're on Wi-Fi, you're on Zoom, you've uploaded content, you've chopped content, you've pulled it into Resolve, and you're sitting in your dining room.
Yeah. I mean, earlier when I was going through this, I was actually 3 floors away from our Wi-Fi point, and it was all running exactly as it is here as well. But yeah, it's no, it is a really mind-blowing application. It's kind of one of those things I kind of hate sounding like I'm doing a sales spiel, but you know, when I find a really cool tool that you can just see has so much power in it, and I think I've said 100 times that, you know, the thing with Flow is that it's really mature. It's not just suddenly arrived. It's been getting worked on and refined for, I think, around 8 years now. And so it's really full featured. It doesn't feel like a bit of beta software that almost works. It actually is legit.
Great. Okay, thanks for that, Zeb. I just grabbed control back of the screen. And, you know, I guess the next point we want to talk really about is, you know, moving forward. You know, everybody here, we can change the approach of remote productions, and we can change how we deliver productions, and I guess remote working and remote production should be definitely part of your setup. I guess just talking to you as well, you know, demystifying working from home. You know, clients have mixed experiences, you know, with people working from home, and you know, I guess what we're trying to say is you can create amazing from, you know, any place, by embracing technology, embracing the best of tools, and changing.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing is definitely to not try and treat remote working like everyone's in a building. It's just not the same thing, but also it shouldn't be. So you know, you need to trust your team and understand that they're not necessarily going to be at work or working every moment that you think that they should be, but you want them to be able to sort of fit work into their real life as well as possible. So you definitely have to trust there. I definitely think as well, if there's a way to come up with metrics and systems to be able to measure output, you know, so it's especially easy, obviously, with grading and online and finishing delivery, because we know how long is booked and available for these jobs. What I actually think becomes more of a problem is getting people to stop working. because I think I probably said earlier, you know, when people love their work, they will just keep doing it, and it becomes a thing of, you know, how do you get people to understand that, you know, just because you feel like working or you're in kind of a zone and you're really enjoying yourself, after 12 hours or whatever, you're not doing great work. It's not getting better. You are better to go away from that. And we've actually found, last year we moved our quoting from, you know, the traditional quotes would come through and there would be 10-hour days or 12-hour days or whatever it may be. And we just said, well, you know, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to book things or quote as 8-hour days. So if you need 24 hours of work, that's going to be 3 8-hour days. And we actually found doing that people were finishing quicker, not taking more time. So it's actually, when they were doing 10 or 12-hour days, they were actually taking longer, because then they would start going into 13 or 14 or 15 because they're starting to get tired at that point. And by doing 8-hour days, actually everyone's getting home at a better time. And often on that third day, we're signing off, you know, at 2 or 3 p.m. rather than 5 or 6 p.m. You know, it's we're actually typically finishing faster. You know, obviously there's still things that can go wrong. Nothing's perfect. But you know, provided we have a project that's actually managed to lock and we're good to work on it, we can turn over everything very quickly.
Yeah, I you know, again, going back to, obviously you've been doing this for a number of years, and there's a lot of people on the call here who are just, I guess, entering into this remote production workflow, and you have come across a lot of barriers. You've broken through some barriers. Can you give a couple of, you know, your do's and don'ts of, you know, how do you have a distributed workflow, team? How do you have a distributed workflow? But how do you keep the collaboration on point? How do you keep everybody on the same page? You know, and you know, how do you keep their well-being, you know, at the top of your mind?
Yeah, so I mean, we're always basically, some of this starts to come down to finances. I mean, from day one, we kind of, well, I knew what I wanted to be able to offer to our staff and make sure that they were really well looked after, but we couldn't afford it at that stage. So obviously, as we've scaled up, we've been able to then kind of go, okay, cool, well, let's introduce unlimited holiday. Let's make sure that if people are working late, they get, you know, free Ubers home and Deliveroo, you know, deliveries to make sure that they eat. You know, it's the least we can do if they do, you know, for reasons outside of their own control, end up working late, which still can happen, especially with fast turnaround work. But, you know, we don't want that to be the norm. And we also brought in unlimited holiday just to make sure that people didn't have to feel like, oh no, well, I've got this thing I want to go to, but if I can't go, it's fine. You know, because they didn't want to lose holiday from what was going to be their big holiday later in the year. You know, sort of just making sure that there's an unlimited holiday, and it just means that if people have a concert to go to or a school thing to go to for their kids, they can just book that day off and not have to feel worried that that's going to come off somewhere else. So, you know, again, this goes back to our sort of core principle. If we're all about delivering great looking pictures, ultimately the talent that works, you know, with us and works at the finish line are the people doing that. And so we need to just do everything we can to look after them and, you know, and trying to be, you know, for me, I talk a lot about things like my depression and breakdown and things like that, because I want them to know that they can talk about these things as well. And that helps me to be able to look after and support them better too. So we can kind of offer different solutions. So yeah, just trying to make sure that everyone is heard, try and seek out conversations. I'll often try and, it's not happening at the moment, but I used to try and have a dinner with a different member of the team every 2 weeks, one-on-one, just to make sure that there was an opportunity for people that, you know, a lot of people might be introverts or not that comfortable to speak up publicly within Slack or on a phone call or whatever it might be. So to sit down and have a dinner and a chat is a really helpful thing to do as well.
I guess you were saying as well, to get to know your technology providers, it's quite important. I mean, you know, we're not all these people hiding behind dark masks, right? We want to make things better, and I think that was one of your big points that you made earlier.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, often the people making the tools don't necessarily use them, you know, and so or don't use them or don't understand the use case that you might have as an individual. So I think it's always been really important to me. I mean, earlier in my career, I just kind of assumed that all these companies would Goliaths and they didn't care about what I had to say about anything. But obviously, as I got sort of further along, I was like, oh, this would be so cool if it did this one thing, and it doesn't do it, and I'm going to have to look at another bit of software to replace this now. And then I started sort of just sending a message through to whoever it might be and saying, hey, if this could do this, it would be really good. And more often than not, the software developers would go, hey, oh, cool, thanks for letting us know, we're going to do that. And so often that these things, little requests that we make, do actually end up in the tools that we use, and it makes a big difference for us. One little tweak to a bit of software, if you're doing we're delivering over 1,000 programs a year. Those so those little tweaks start to add up, immensely.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting, from I guess your breakdown to your mental well-being, to pivoting to doing remote productions, and having your staff's well-being at the forefront. Your productivity is really good, and I get it's almost, we're saying we can almost have it all, while or we can be on the road to have a better work-life balance by utilizing technology along with mindfulness to create a better company. And your company is, I guess, is very successful, and it's constantly growing. So you must be doing something right.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and it's I think it is. It obviously works. I mean, early on, everyone, when I sort of was talking, publicly about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to approach things, everyone's kind of telling me I was stupid and it wasn't going to work and it's not how things work. But now we're very far along and very established and a bit more comfortable, but we've still got, like you say, a long way to go. Ultimately, we'd love to get to a point where the finish line as a brand, everyone just knows they can sort of send content our way and we'll make it look amazing and deliver it, and pass all the tech reviews and all the rest of it. So someday we'd hope that all of our staff can live wherever in the world they might like to live. And obviously that allows us to attract the best talent in the world, because suddenly it doesn't matter where they are, they can be a part of the finish line, and we can all deliver great stuff together.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, Zeb, I'd really like to thank you a lot, actually, for doing not only this webinar but the one earlier today for our other colleagues. And just a couple of questions, just some questions coming in. You've made a deployment in AWS and you're running Flow in AWS. What was the main reason you chose AWS for your cloud instance?
Well, they've got a much bigger, footprint than everyone else. So especially, I mean, I started doing virtual systems in AWS probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer. And it was a random conversation with someone in IT who was saying, oh, why aren't you using Glacier for your backup? And I was like, oh, I don't even know what that is. And looked into it, and it worked really well and was really easy and much more fun than LTO tapes. And so I started using it, and that was a bit of a gateway drug into the cloud world, really, for me. And then and it just became a thing of, I'd like to do automated transcoding, and there were lots of little things that were there, and I was just early on just tinkering, and then suddenly I'd be like, oh, this could be a great thing to offer our clients. And then more times than not, we would try and bring something forward to clients, and they were not interested because they we used to doing things the way that they were doing things. So
Yeah.
Obviously those opinions have changed, and it used to be a really common conversation, the whole conversation about security and things like that. And we see so much security trouble within physical facilities. I honestly believe that a lot of the cloud-based solutions are more secure than most of the facilities that I've worked in. I just kind of, I ended up there. I would change if it was the right thing to do, like with everything. But Amazon AWS still is the biggest, and we can spin up instances in Australia and the US and Ireland, wherever.
And I guess you were saying that actually earlier on. You spent 6 weeks in New Zealand this year, and you were working on productions with the team back in the UK with no problem.
Yeah, it was actually really good because it was the opposite time. So I would sort of jump on in the morning after doing breakfast with my daughter, and I could sort of see a breakdown on Slack of everything that was going on throughout that day without having to kind of be too involved. But then I could also log in and take over, and if there was anything that needed to be done, I could do it all remotely. So yeah, it was great.
A couple more coming in there. In terms of the network connection that you have, what would you be the minimum requirement for a good user experience working remotely?
I would sort of say that you probably, it depends on the exact part of the remote process, you know. So if we were providing all of our staff with a system, because there's a lot of big data moving around. So if this current situation of everyone being at home was the standard, we would actually be installing probably 1 gig lines at everyone's house, or at least 100 meg each way. But if everything's in the cloud and you're working with virtual systems and remote systems and working with things like Flow, you really don't need a lot. I actually did a demo years ago where I had 3G running on my phone, sharing to my laptop at a pub drinking a whiskey, and I had 10 editing systems running on separate virtual machines, and I was just tabbing between them, setting off, you know, file transcodes and things. So, you know, these it depends on exactly what you're doing. So if you were just using, you know, Airflow and browsing footage, you know, you would be fine on a basic sort of 5 meg connection or something, you know. I've been spoiled with internet, so I actually don't know what it feels like to have really slow.
Yeah, well, I guess we have done tests internally, and we got a pretty smooth workflow. Would have been between 5 and 8 megabits. You know, that we would have got a, you know, reasonably good response from the applications. Just somebody else, does Flow Story come with Flow? Yes, it does. Flow Story is built in. I guess Zeb showed that part of the Flow setup module.
Yeah, you just install that and run it, and I guess it needs to talk to a Flow server. I think that's the only sort of requirement to it. For you to access your projects and things.
One from an education client, Zeb. I work in education, and by the time our first years graduate, remote working will be widespread really in the industry. You know, what are the most important skills to be teaching them around remote working?
I mean, I don't think that anyone needs to be taught anything in particular. I mean, it's a tricky thing. I mean, the young people sort of getting into this industry have a lot of tools around them. I think that was kind of a luxury for me, is that these things didn't exist in some ways. So I've been able to kind of take these on one stage at a time. So started, like I said, linear, and was able to learn a tool at a time. And when, you know, more complex grading tools came along, I could start learning them, and compositing tools, and I could learn them. So I kind of feel like I've had a luxury in doing that. And I actually feel for all the young people now, because they have so much choice of all the tools and what to use and how to use it. I really don't know the best skill to learn if you were, you know, these people are going to work remotely. I would say, I mean, when I started learning, and I think this is still what I tell everyone, is to just do an hour practice a day. You know, ultimately, the quality of your work is going to be what sells you. And so, you know, whether you're getting a song and some random footage and cutting something every day, whatever it is, yeah, just do practice. And we actually schedule in practice for all of our staff now. So we're aiming to eventually have that 1 day a week that every member of the team does deliberate practice. But currently it's 1 every 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other ones there, your Resolve, was that running in a VM, or was that on your system?
Resolve runs fine in VM, and I was running it on my system, mostly because I was just kind of trying not to sort of overdo it on bandwidth, because I didn't want viewers at home to start losing my signal. But you know, Resolve runs perfectly fine in a virtual environment. So yeah, do it.
Yeah, a few more. Will this session's recording be made available? Yes, it will be. anybody who's on the call here will get an email with a copy of the video. Some other questions, Flow Story, does it come with version 7 or in EditShare 2020? Flow Story is available in both. And just for everybody that are on the call at the moment, we have made Flow available free of charge up through July the 1st. So anybody who wants to test it and try it out, they get the full features of all the full suite of tools that you see here. So Airflow, Flow Story, Flow Automation. Zeb, I know it's late. I just want to thank you for staying up late. I know you have a very young daughter and she gets up very early. So I want to thank you for joining us late this evening. And
That's right.
that was
Thank
our
you for having
second webinar in the series. We will be back very shortly, probably not next week, the week after, with some new technology that we'll be showing. So keep an eye out on the website, and up you will see some invitations go out over the next few days. So thanks for joining and take care.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks, Seb.